Hi, I'm Chris Berkeley, and I'm a digital marketing consultant. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up goal conversion tracking using the Contact Form 7 plugin and Google Tag Manager. Let me unpack that a little bit. You have a WordPress site, and you're using the Contact Form 7 plugin for form submissions, and you want to track submissions to those forms as goal conversions in Google Analytics, and you're using Google Tag Manager. I wrote a blog post about this, and it was very popular, so now I'm making a video to walk you through it step by step. Let's go ahead and jump right in, and I'll show you how to do that.
Before I dive into the step-by-step process, let me explain what we're going to be doing here. When someone submits a Contact Form 7 form, there is a browser event indicating that mail has been sent. And we are going to use Google Tag Manager to take that browser event and transform it into a Google Analytics event, which we will then use to set up a Google Analytics goal conversion. If you prefer to follow along with step-by-step written instructions, I have the same guide on my website, and there's a link in the video description where you can go find that. So the first thing that we're going to do is, of course, you need a page with a contact form, and here I have one on a mountain biking website that I founded and used to write for. Then you're going to go into Google Tag Manager, and the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to set up a new tag. So you can click New. This one is going to be WPCF7 mail sent. The tag configuration, we're going to set up as a custom HTML tag. And then we're going to take a little bit of JavaScript and we're going to copy and paste that into the tag. If you need to get that JavaScript, again, you can go to the written guide on my website, which is linked in the description. I also have a link to a direct .txt file where you can just copy and paste it. Now, what this JavaScript does is actually pretty straightforward. It listens for that browser event. When mail is actually sent, the WPCF7 mail sent event occurs, and that is how we're going to differentiate between someone who actually submits the form versus someone who clicks the submit button and maybe it doesn't go through because they didn't fill out all the fields. So when that happens, it creates a data layer push, which takes some information and pushes that event into the data layer. And we're also going to grab the form ID. And this is really helpful if you want to track a certain type of form and you don't want to track all of the Contact Form 7 forms on your site. So you can go ahead and create that tag and click Save. You do not need a trigger for it. It will ask you if you do, but you don't. All right? And then the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a trigger. We're going to create a new one. And we're going to name this Contact Form 7 Trigger. In trigger configuration, we're going to set it up as a custom event, and we are going to call that WPCF7 successful submit, because again, this is the language from the JavaScript event that we just set up. And we are going to fire that on all custom events, and then go ahead and click Save. Next, we're going to set up a second tag. We're going to call this one Contact Form Submission. And under tag configuration, we're going to do Universal Analytics. And as the track type, we're going to do an event. And then this is really important. So this information here is how we're going to differentiate this event from others that may be present in Google Analytics. So for the category, we're going to do contact form. For the action, we will do successful form submission, mail sent. And then in the label, we are going to do, and this is important that you add the curly quotations here, or the curly parentheses, CF7 form ID. And we'll touch on what this is going to do in a minute, but basically this is going to capture the individual form ID. So if you want to track a specific form or multiple forms, you will differentiate with this field here. You can add a value if you want to. For example, you could do page URL or some other things, but that's not necessary. That would just be extra information if you wanted it. As a non-interaction hit, leave that as false. And then under select settings variable, override the settings, and then just go ahead and add in your Google Analytics tracking code there. You may already have that set up as a variable in Google Tag Manager, in which case it's super easy to add. Then at the bottom, we are going to set up the trigger as the one we just created, Contact Form 7 Trigger. Okay, Then the fourth thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a variable related to that tag we just created. And we're going to scroll to the bottom and add a new variable. We're going to call that one CF7 form ID. This has to be the same as the variable that we just put in the previous tag. And for the variable configuration, we are going to grab a data layer variable, and then that is going to be CF7 form ID. And then we'll click save there. All right, so now we've created two tags, a trigger and a variable, and we're basically done in Google Tag Manager. But real quick, let me go back and review everything we created and how it works. So again, under tags, we created a JavaScript tag that listens for that browser event when mail is sent, and it pushes this event, the WP-CF7 successful submit, and also the form ID into the data layer. And then once it's in the data layer, we need to somehow grab it, and then we're going to use the trigger. So the contact form 7 trigger basically looks for that particular event, and then all it does is set up to trigger the next tag. So the contact form 7 submission tag has the category contact form, the action, and then the label is actually going to grab the form ID that we sent from the first tag. Of course, the variable that we just set up simply grabs that information from the data layer and pulls it into Google Tag Manager so we can use it in Google Analytics. So that's it for Google Tag Manager setup. Now what you have to do next in order to get this into Analytics is go in, and you can go into Admin, and you can go over all the way right here to Goals if you want to set up goal conversions. And here I already have mine set up, but I'll show you how to do it. So under Goal Setup, you're going to scroll down and click Custom, and then Continue. Under Goal Description, you want to give it a name. Contact Form 7 Submission is mine. And the type is going to be an event. Again, this is going to rely on the Google Analytics events that we just created through Tag Manager. Click Continue. And then for the goal details, we're going to set this information to be consistent with what we just put into Google Tag Manager. So in this case, the category is actually going to be contact form. The action is going to be successful form submission, mail sent. Now the label. So again, if you wanted to track submissions to all of your contact form 7 forms, then you would leave this blank because then it'll track everything. Now, if you wanted to track a specific form, you can add in the form ID here. And to find the form ID, if you go into Contact Form 7, you look at your contact forms. Each contact form will have an ID associated with it. It's going to be this number here. So in this case, I have 2 forms, but if I only want to track one of them, then I'm going to look for this ID here. And this is, of course, dependent on what pages that you have these on. So it's important to know where they're located. On my contact page here, if I look at the form itself, you'll see the number is 2477. Which is, of course, consistent with the ID that's in the shortcode here. So I'm just going to track that one. So I'm going to go into my Google Analytics goal conversion. I'm going to do 2477 as my label. And again, you can set that to whichever one you want to. And if you want to set up multiple goal conversions for different forms, you can do that. Use the event value as the goal value for the conversion. I don't have a value in this case. If you wanted to add a value to the form submission, you can, but I'm not going to. And then I will click Save. And then you have your goal conversion in there. And the next step would be to test it and verify that it's working, preferably using the real-time reports. You can look at events and conversions. And then these two things would help you determine that tracking has been set up correctly. I may create a separate video on how to track that because that's a little bit more of a process to troubleshoot and make sure that everything is correct.
All right, that wraps it up for goal conversion tracking with Contact Form 7 and Google Tag Manager. If you have any questions, definitely tweet at me and I'll be glad to answer them. You can also leave a comment here. If you like this video and you want to see others like it, feel free to subscribe to this channel. Thanks.